His fingers brushed mine just barely. They trembled. I should have pulled away, but I didn't, because in that moment, in the quiet that lives between guilt and wanting, I wasn't his stepmother. I was just a woman who hadn't felt seen in a very long time. His lips hovered uncertain, asking without words. And without saying anything, I answered Dot when we finally touched. It wasn't just skin. It was everything we'd buried. Coming up for air, Dot, my name is Carla. I'm 4'5" Dot. Most people in town would probably say I live a quiet life. Too quiet, if they're being honest, Dot. I work at the public library just off the square in Brattleboro, Vermont. A place where snow falls like confetti for half the year, and people know each other by the sound of their boots, not just their names. I married Doug 8 years ago. He's a good man, stable, practical. The kind who checks the furnace before the first frost and double knots his work boots every morning. He's a contractor. Gone early, home late. Never once raised his voice. Never once raised his eyes to really see me, Dot. We live in a modest 2-story tucked under pine trees near Lake Wantast. It's peaceful, but peace can look a lot like loneliness when you're inside it too long. Doug has a son, Trevor, 20, tall. Quiet, messy hair, guarded eyes, the kind you only get from learning too young how to protect yourself. He used to come around for the holidays, polite, distant, but this winter, things shifted. He dropped out of college, said he didn't fit, didn't connect with anyone, needed a break. Doug was hesitant, but I insisted he stay with us for a while. Everyone deserves one place where they don't have to explain themselves. Secretly, I think I just missed having someone in the house who played music, laughed at dumb memes, walked barefoot into the kitchen at midnight asking for cereal. The first few weeks were quiet. Trevor kept to himself, headphones in, hoodie up, like most young men trying to disappear without being asked why. But one night, I came down to put away laundry. Doug had already gone to bed. Trevor was sitting on the floor, surrounded by a heap of towels, looking completely defeated. The dryer jammed, he said, half smiling. I swear your appliances hate me. I laughed, sat down beside him, started folding, and that's where it began. Not with some grand moment, but with 2 people sitting on the floor, folding worn towels and not needing to say much. After that, it became a pattern. Small exchanges. Silent pauses that felt less like gaps and more like understanding. It wasn't supposed to mean anything. But meaning doesn't ask for permission. Sometimes it's a glance held a second too long. A laugh that makes you feel 10 years younger. The realization that the house feels less cold when he's around. That night, I lay next to my husband, his back turned, already asleep, and I stared at the ceiling, wondering when was the last time someone made me feel awake. Not desired, not wanted. Just seen the next morning. Doug was gone, off to a job upstate. I made coffee like I always do, letting it brew long enough to fill the kitchen with something warm, a small ritual, one of the few that still made the house feel like mine. Trevor came down late, same hoodie, hair tousled. He sat across from me, hands wrapped around a chipped mug like it was holding him together. We didn't say much. Didn't need to. There was something about the quiet between us, not awkward, not tense, just real. I fixed the dryer, he said finally. Well, sort of. It stopped squealing. I smiled. That's better than Doug ever managed. He grinned, lopsided, boyish. Guess I earned a gold star. I tossed him a banana from the bowl. Don't push your luck. He laughed softly, then leaned back in his chair, eyes on me, open in a way that made my chest tighten, not because of what was said, but because of what was felt and how quietly it arrived. You always seem calm, he said, even when everything's broken-y. Looked down at my coffee, unsure what to say. No one had ever described me like that, not since before the divorce, before Doug. Before I stopped asking myself what I wanted, I'm not. I said finally I just fold a lot of laundry and pretend it's peace. That made him smile again, but softer this time, like he understood more than he let on later that afternoon. I was in the den reading when I heard music drifting from upstairs, something mellow and low guitar strings picket with. Carrie followed the sound like a thread and paused just outside. Trevor's room listening, the door was ajar inside. He sat on the floor, back against the bed ice, closed fingers moving gently over the strings. There was a notebook open beside him, half scribbled. Lyrics and doodles scattered across the page, as should have left given him. Privacy bit something about the scene, so gentle, sound guarded, kept me rooted. He opened high sighs and saw me standing there, but hadn't flinched. Sorry, I said, stepping back, didn't mean to interrupt you or not, he replied, patting the carpet beside him. Want to hear something terrible? I hesitated, then sat. He played a few chords and stopped, still working on the middle. It's beautifully whispered. He looked at me, and there was something different in his eyes, not flirtation, not tension, just your sense. Boy becoming a man looking for a place where he didn't have to pretend you. Ever feel like you're just floating throughout someone else's life? He asked if the question hit deeper than he could have known. All the time I answered, and that was the moment. Not a kiss, not a touch, just two people sitting on the floor, hearing each other for the first time. This story resonates with you if you've ever found yourself adrift in the middle of your own quiet storm. Consider supporting our channel with a super chat or a super sticker during the next premiere. It helps. Just keep sharing stories that remind us we're not alone, because sometimes even the most unexpected company can become a soft place to land. That evening, the wind picked up, rattling the window panes with a steady rhythm. I was in the kitchen slicing apples for a pie I had no real intention of baking, just needing to move me hands to quiet the noise in my chest. Trevor came in without a word, barefoot, their damp from the shower, his sweatshirt sleeves pushed up to his elbows. He stood beside me, watching for a moment, and softly, "You always bake when you're thinking too much?" I glanced at him. Maybe I think too much because I bake. He smiled faintly, then leaned against counter, the warmth from his body so close it brushed my shoulder. I kept chopping, but my hands moved slower, like they knew. "I used to think you had me," he said suddenly, his voice quiet as stopped. "What when Dad first got serious about you?" He went on. "You were always polite but distant, like you weren't sure you were allowed to care." I turned toward him, knife down. I was afraid to get it wrong. He nodded. Like that made perfect sense. So was I. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of years neither of us had ever said out loud. He didn't plan what happened next. It was just instinct, made lonely and smay foolishness. He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind his ear. The way I used tone, he was a boy, skin, knees, and oversized shoes, but this time my fingers lingered, not motherly, not neutral. He didn't flinch. Instead, he leaned in just slightly, so slightly. I could have pretended I imagined it, but I didn't. I felt the shift in the air, the heat between us, the ache of something unspoken. Finally, whispering its name. "I think about you too much," he said, ice yerking mine. I swallowed. "Yeah, Sheldon. I know." He stepped closer. "I'm not a kid anymore, Hannah." He added, "I noticed things like how you pretend you're okay, how you make excuse it to go to bed when Doug's home." Trevor, I began, but the word melted on my tongue. Way didn't touch me. He didn't have to. The tension between us was a thread. Pull it too tight. "I shouldn't be here," it whispered, "but you are." And I didn't move. I didn't run, because deep down in the kitchen filled with pie crusts and in tears, I realized I'd been waiting not for him but for something to remind me I was still live within. It happened not fast, not desperate, just his hand reaching out, brushing many a spark, a pause, a question, and I answered it with stillness, with the way I let my fingers turn to meet his, looking, softly trembling. He leaned in, slowly giving me every second to change me mind. I didn't. Our lips met like a confession. Neither of us meant to say. A lid soft, searching, hesitant. His mouth was warm and unsure, tasting off a permanent and youth mind, cautious but hungry, aching for tenderness. I'd long since buried it didn't last long, webbled away breathless, and for a moment, world stood still. He didn't speak, neither did I. There was too much between us two. Much risk, too much truth, but when he reached for my hand again, gentle, wordless, I let him, not because it was right, but because it was honest. The next morning, sunlight poured through the lace curtains like it didn't care what had happened the night before. The kitchen smelled like caffeine and denial. I was already up, standing at the sink with a mug in my hand. I hadn't slept from. Trevor came in quietly, his hair was still wet from the shower, his eyes redrimmed like he hadn't slept, neither had he. He didn't sit, just leaned against the door frame, watching me like I might vanish if he blinked. "I'm sorry," I said. I shook my head. "Don't be that as worst part, you're not." We both laughed, not from joy, but because the silence was too sharp, not to soften. He moved closer, stopped just short off, touching me. "Does it feel like we ruined something?" "I don't know," I said. "It feels like we finally acknowledged something we were both pretending wasn't there." He nodded slowly, like that hurt and healed all at once. Didn't speak about what to do next. What could we say? The rules were broken in pretending. We could tape them back together. Felt worse than the truth. "I'm scared," he admitted. "So am I," I whispered. Then, because the weight in the room was too much for one breath, I reached across the counter and took his hand. It was warm, familiar, squeezed gently. And for a moment, I let myself believe we could be more than just a mistake. "If you've stayed with use this far, if your heart's beating a little faster, if you're holding your breath, like we were that morning, this is where I asked for something small. Consider supporting our channel with a super chat or super sticker. It helps keep these stories alive, the ones that didn't shy away from the messy human parts, the ones we often live but never tell out." Late that afternoon, I made myself busy. I scrubbed the porch railing, rearranged living room bookshelves, vacuumed corners no one ever looked at, but when I passed by the hallway mirror, I saw something in my face I hadn't recognized in years. Not guilt, not shame, just a strange kind of awakening, as if the woman staring back wasn't just someone's wife or someone's stepmother. She was someone who had dared to feel again. Trevor avoided me for most of the day. I let him. I needed space, to not to forget, but to process. By the lunch at dinner, we sat like strangers, playing house. Doug was homeless, fully unaware, talking about work and weekend plans. I nodded, smiled, passed at the potatoes. Trevor barely touched his plate. Later, as we cleared dishes, our hands brushed again. We both flinched, not from disgust, but from memory. That night, I didn't go to his room, but I didn't sleep either. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling fan spinning, slowly wondering Eiffel intimacy carries the seeds of destruction, or if this one was just planted in the wrong garden. And still I didn't regret the way he looked at Menet, like a mistake, but like someone who had finally seen the whole of me. It was supposed to be over, that's what I told myself as I loaded up dishwasher the next morning, watching Trevor pass through the kitchen with Appleite, nod and a stiff smile, like we were back to being a mother, and her polite distant steps in. He even called, Linda again, not Janet, hey, just Linda, but the silence wasn't clean. It hummed. It lingered like a note held too long after the song had ended. By afternoon, Doug had taken a phone call from work, something about Abercon pipeline and overnight shifting. Just like that, the house belonged to us again. Trevor stayed upstairs, I stayed downstairs, and we danced around each other like ghosts of something unspoken. Around 8 a.m., I poured myself a glass, offered wine I didn't really want, and walked out to the porch, pretending to enjoy the sunset. But the truth was, I was watching the upstairs window, wondering if he was watching me. He saw the curtain flutter out. Moment later, the door creaked open behind me. Is the seat taken? He asked, holding a mug of tea like it was armor. I guess not, I said, pretending to be casual. Pretending? He sat down beside me, not close enough to touch, but close enough that I could smell the soap on his skin, that stupid woodsy kind that always made my chest tight, and neither of us said anything for a long while. Then I keep thinking about it, he said quietly, not just a moment, but what it meant. I looked down at my wine, and what did it mean? He didn't answer right away, then it meant I felt safe with you, like I didn't have to perform. That broke something in me. Not because of the words, but because of the need behind them, the ache of Simeon, who had grown up looking for permission to exist exactly as he was. He turned to him, eyes burning dough. You know how long it's been since Simeon said that to me? He looked at me, his own voice cracking dough. You know how long I've needed to have porch light, buzzed a moth, flitted around. It couldn't help but return to the thing that burned it. Webbeth knew how that felt. He reached a pheasant, brushing my hand with his fingertips. It wasn't a request, it was a reminder. You can't do this. I whispered, I know, but I want to. I know that too. And then we kissed. It wasn't hungry this time. It was slow, careful, the kind of kiss that knows there's a price on the other side but chooses to pay. Anyway, his hand cupped my jaw gently and minute tangled in the sleeve of his sweater like I needed something to hold on. Tothic kiss held. Years of loneliness, of questions we didn't know. We were allowed to ask. We broke apart only when porch light flickered again and we remembered where we were and who we weren't allowed to. But Trevor exhaled shackily. This is wrong. Does it feel like the first honest thing I've done in months? He didn't have an answer, just a heartbeat that wouldn't calm down. Just a mouth that tasted like something I couldn't unfold. Next morning, the kitchen was quieter than usual. No clinking plates, no lazy weekend jazz from the speaker. Just the ticking clock and the ache in my chest. Duke had already left for his shift. Trevor hadn't come downstairs yet, and May stood by the sink, staring at the coffee I poured, but hadn't touched it back, as nothing about that day felt right. Nay heard his footsteps on the stairs. Felt air shift. He didn't say good morning, just walked straight to the fridge, grabbed the orange juice, and poured a glass with a kind of stillness that screamed louder than words. I couldn't sleep. He said finally, me neither, hadn't to face me, so hat now, what now? As if I had an answer for that I wanted to say. We pretend it didn't happen. We go back to being thoughtful people who pass each other in hallways and never let fingers brush again. But what came out was different. I didn't regret last night, but we can't stay in it. He nodded slowly, almost painfully. No. Doesn't make it easier. Will sat at the table, the same one where used to help him with math homework when was 12 now. Our knees brushed under Iton. Neither of us pulled away. I think it needed to be seen. I whispered it as someone's wife, not as Simeon's stepmistress. Looked at me like he understood in a way. No one ever had you made me feel whole, he said, softly like. I wasn't broken. We sat in that roof for a while, long enough to know I couldn't keep it, but not long enough to forget it. And if you've made it this far, this story stirred something in you. If you believe in raw, honest storytelling, please consider supporting the channel with a super chat or a super sticker. It helps us keep bringing youth stories that others are too afraid to tell. Thank you. That evening, I found a note tucked under my bedroom door. Linda, I think it's best I head back to Portland. I need space to figure out what kind of man I want to be, and I can't doff it here, but I'll never forget what you gave me, not just the touch, but the truth. Thank you for seeing me, Trevor. I read it twice, then again, and then I cried, not from regret, but from the bittersweet sting of something real passing through our life for just a moment. And having the courage to let it go. That night, I sat alone on the porch again, a different kind of quiet settling there in a minute. Lonely, just honest, asterisk, 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 asterisk. Thanks for listening, asterisk, 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 asterisk. Bye-bye.